So in preparation for Monday's session in the studio, I'm just going to do a brief introduction to a couple of printmaking techniques that will be on offer. You'll have your sketches from the Aquarium, and I'm going to lead you in a couple of possibilities. One is Lino printing. So that's a print made from this piece of lino. It doesn't show so well on the screen, I think, but I'll give you a brief demonstration of the lino technique using the tools, the cutting tools, and I'll do a little example on that small piece of lino. And the other thing I'll demonstrate is some monoprinting. I'm going to put a link on the email to a video that I've already made a few years ago when we were at the castle of the monoprinting technique, wiping away the ink from a plate. And I'm going to show you now working with a couple of colours and using the sea creature subject matter. So this is going to be the wipe away monoprint technique. And I'm going to work with two colours. I'm going to use my drawing of the seahorse. And I'm just going to put down some sort of seahorse shape. I've picked up the brown ink on the roller. And I'm applying a bit to my piece of Perspex. I hope you can see that because it's a bit shiny. So I'm going to work with the brown shape first, do a bit of wiping away, negative shape, to get my seahorse figure. And then I'm going to add some turquoise around the outside. This monoprinting technique is great for quickly generating images. It's also particularly nice for texture. You often get a kind of instant texture out of the process. But it's inevitably a little bit sort of experimental, trial and error. And the process is very much moving the ink around and getting a feel for how much to leave behind, possibly how much to add again. And because it's a monoprint, a monotype, you only really get one go. This ink, I don't know if it's because we're having such hot weather, the ink's drying quite quickly, so I think I need to hurry up. But I just want you to see if I hold that up against the light. This is what we can do with the Perspex, is hold it up against the light just to see what the final image might look like. That's me just wiping away. The roller and the ink gives me a reasonable texture, and I've changed the outline shape, but I could also draw a little bit with a pencil or some implement if I want to get, in my drawing I've kind of noted, well, there's an eye, of course, but I've noted there was a certain pattern to the seahorse's body. There were funny fins that are like wings or something. So I might make some changes, by drawing into that. And sometimes even an outline is interesting. And then I'm going to add some colour around the outside. So I've cleaned my roller and I'm picking up a bit of turquoise now and putting it around the outside. So we'll see how I get on with placing that. There will be some challenges getting it not to eliminate my careful negative shape, but on the other hand it's good to have soft edges or edges that have mixed a little bit. In fact, I partly got the idea for this looking up fish and printmaking. I came across a Japanese traditional technique of inking up fish, something to do with recording the fish, documenting the fish before eating it. So that is something to consider. There won't be any fish to ink up in the studio, but I did read a thing from, which I'll try and give you a link to, from the Dundee Printmakers Workshop, where they were inking up fish, but also, let me just hold that up for you again. It's funny, this is a turquoise ink, but it looks blue. So I've got a bit of variety there just from the roller, but I'm going to wipe away a bit now, see if I can create a bit more depth using the rag and maybe a wipe as well, because this is the great thing with monoprinting, that you can really work with light. So, you know, where I wipe away, I'll get lighter versions and, you know, more luminous, translucent versions of that turquoise. Even though it's looking blue to you, it is turquoise. If something goes wrong and I take off bits of the seahorse, I think I maybe just have to live with that. I could, or you could, experiment with painting back on the ink. I might give you some links, send you some images by Kate Downey, who does really fabulous monotypes and often is working really with light with the way things are wiped off. So I'll do that just to show you a little bit. There you go, you can see better if I do it like that. Okay, so I'm going to take a print of this. Yes, the Dundee Printmakers Workshop were advertising a workshop where they were actually preparing fish in some way. I think they varnished them or something before inking them up and taking a print from them. But they did say they used some sort of water-based ink, so it was okay, you could still eat the fish. Is that true? So, taking an impression of the monoprint, rubbing it down. You've seen all this on the other video. Perhaps pulling up the corner just to check, and if I wasn't getting enough ink off, then I would actually, maybe the nose could just, if there's anywhere that isn't picking up enough ink, if you don't remove it completely, then you can often do a little bit more. So actually I'm not displeased with that. There's my seahorse. It is much more turquoise in real life. I'm going to do one more thing to this. This is just an experiment, but I've got a water spray here, and the block printing ink is quite thick, viscous, and that's designed so that you can wipe it and it stays wet. It reacts in an interesting way to water. The water dissolves it and it loses its viscosity. But I'll take one more print and see what we get. And this might be the sort of thing you want to experiment with when you're doing your monoprints. I've done 2 colours. I've got a few more colours. You can mix the inks if you want to make specific colours. Well, there we go. It's lost some of the definition, but there's some interesting possibilities there. So that's monoprinting, and that's what's left on the plate now. That lifted quite a lot off. And now some lino cutting. So this will be a rapid demonstration on quite a small piece of lino that comes with some already dug out marks. So I'm going to work with I don't know what sort of fish this is, but that is my model. And first I'm drawing with pencil the basic outline to my fish. And then with a thin tool, those lines, that line that I've drawn there, I'm going to dig out. So this is the tool. It has a blade, and you experiment a bit with the angle. If it's hard work pushing the blade through the lino, then you've probably dug too deep. If you don't go deep enough, then the blade will skim across the surface and you won't have removed anything. So you start by doing the lines. So you see there I've done most of the lines, including a few lines in the fins and the tail. I'll just lastly do the eye, in part just to demonstrate that ideally you don't want to be aiming the tool towards you, which I'm doing. I'm going the wrong way. Anyway, by turning the lino, you can control where the blade is going to go. So that was all done with the thin blade. I'm going to swap tools now, and this is a wider blade, and I'm going to use that to basically remove some of the background. So this is something you might think about for your design. The bits that I dig away like this are not going to pick up as much ink, because a little bit like a stamp, a rubber stamp, what I'm leaving behind is raised and will pick up the ink. What I dig out is lower because I'm digging it out, and therefore it won't pick up so much ink. It will pick up some ink, and actually I'm doing horizontal lines, but it might be a good idea to do some wavy type lines so that what is basically the watery background will have that particular texture. What I would also recommend I do, and you do, if you've carefully drawn out your subject, then maybe with the bigger tool work away from it, because were you to slip in doing your background, you might, dig into those carefully carved lines. So there is my prepared lino. I've rolled a bit of turquoise ink onto my roller, and so I will ink up my piece of lino. And again, a bit like monoprinting, it's worth experimenting a bit with how much ink you put on. Sometimes a new piece of lino needs a bit more ink, and if there are things that you'd like to change about your piece of lino, that can also be done. This is the easy cut, soft cut lino, and then we lay on a piece of paper, and either with a roller or a boran or your fist, and take an impression. I'm doing it just on a piece of newsprint, which is nice and sensitive. And again, same advice, as you lift it off, don't lift it right off, because look, that corner's not very strong. Maybe there are places that I could double check. And here is my print. There we go. And of course, because it's printing, you can do multiples. I could also have cut out the piece of lino and not had a background, but just had the shape as demonstrated by this example. Okay, so that's a couple of printmaking techniques, the monoprinting and the lino cutting, and they'll be available for you to do in the studio on Monday, and I'll have a variety of colours. And this sort of thing can be done straight onto paper, onto card. It can also be done onto collage and even onto prepared backgrounds. Okay, see you then.